The comic book crash of the mid-1990s devastated sales all across the medium. Marvel and DC had cannibalized many of their smaller competitors. There was an overflooded market with too many variant, holofoil, and limited and first editions. Gimmicks like the death of Superman, for example, resulted in outsiders believing every seemingly special form of comic I just listed would be worth thousands down the road, which only resulted in more of them being made and decreasing their value in the long run. Even the way comics were sold changed. Newsstands were gone, and hobby shops were in. The entire industry was shook up and lost its footing, and it never really fully recovered in all honesty, especially once the internet became a thing. In 1996, to help combat spiraling sales and add to the already lengthy list of gimmicks to sell a few more comics, Marvel and DC joined forces and founded a short-lived imprint they shared called Amalgam Comics, which released a total of 24 issues over the span of 2 years, 1996 and 1997, before disbanding. The purpose of Amalgam was to depict an epic crossover event, DC vs. Marvel, where several of their characters would do battle with each other to see which universe would come out victorious. There would be a real-life vote by readers to determine which character would prevail in 5 separate matchups: Superman vs. Hulk, Spider-Man vs. Superboy, Batman vs. Captain America, Wolverine vs. Lobo, and Storm vs. Wonder Woman. What it came down to was a popularity contest in the end. The battles, while cool to see, were only a few pages long each. Squash matches that were over in a few quick strikes, which to many may have seemed disappointing, all things considered. They felt really shallow, and you could tell very little effort was put into them, despite some of them ending in camaraderie, which added some weight to the whole thing. On top of that, apart from maybe Wolverine vs. Lobo, the battles were orchestrated to be fairly one-sided in terms of popularity. You weren't going to see Superman or Batman take on Spider-Man, because Marvel and DC weren't going to let the fans vote on their tentpole characters like that. If they lost, it would be embarrassing. They weren't that stupid, even back then. The in-story context given to this massive battle was that there were 2 brothers, physical embodiments of their respective universes, DC and Marvel, that became aware of each other after eons of slumber. They each viewed themselves as unique and whole, and the existence of the other prevented that from becoming a reality. Since they were too powerful to determine a victor amongst themselves, they chose champions to battle in their place in order to claim victory. In the end, they merge into one being and combine universes, creating amalgam characters which are combinations of both Marvel and DC heroes and villains, Frankenstein monsters of sorts. By the end of all 24 issues, and all the fighting, the brothers come to a realization that they can coexist and that they have been unique and whole all along. They learn this from the heroes Captain America and Batman, who both started out alone, but over the years have managed to fight alongside others and work as a team, work together. Batman vs. Captain America was the only fight in which the heroes stopped and realized their errors. There wasn't really a victor in that instance. The 2 brothers would shake hands and congratulate the other for all their hard work, having done well. Though the DC vs. Marvel series was the meat and potatoes of this crossover, Amalgam had released several other titles featuring their merged characters, such as Amazon, a combination of Wonder Woman and Storm, Doctor Strange Fate, a fusion of Doctor Strange, Charles Xavier, and Dr. Fate, Super Soldier, Superman, and Captain America, Lobo the Duck, Lobo, and Howard the Duck, and my personal favorite, Dark Claw, an amalgam of Batman and Wolverine. He is one of the most badass-looking comic characters I've ever seen, and by far the best thing to come out of this crossover, at least in my opinion. I think Amalgam Comics was an interesting, though short-lived experiment. Their strength was in the simple fact that we got to see some of our favorite characters from Marvel and DC interact with one another for the very first time. Showdowns we never thought were possible that up until that point only lived in our fantasies and daydreams. Amalgam was simply a gimmick at the time when comics, for all intents and purposes, were a sinking ship. two of the biggest publishers working together to keep each other afloat. Though DC Comics had a much larger safety net and was a subsidiary of Time Warner by the time the crash happened, Marvel was struggling, having to file for bankruptcy in late 1996. Marvel managed to stay in business after selling some of the film rights of its characters to companies like Sony, Universal, and Fox, and once Marvel itself was acquired by Disney in 2009, the rest became history. A lot of people may bash the movies nowadays for stealing the spotlight from their source material, maybe even not adapting it as well as they could have, but realize without the movies, without the cartoons or live-action television shows, companies like Marvel and DC might not be around anymore. The turn of the century led to a lot of changes within the comic book industry and society in general. People don't read physical books anymore, they'd rather get it digital or in audio form. And IPs as large as superheroes or Harry Potter, for example, lead to countless other forms of visual media, TV series, movies, video games, what have you. Yeah, it's unfortunate that people for the most part won't pick up and read a book or comic, but then again, I don't really blame them. So much information is a few keyboard strikes away, and if they can find other forms of entertainment that tell just as compelling narratives as the comics do, then so be it. I won't judge. It's not laziness per se, but convenience. People live busy lives, they have shit to do. If anything, companies like Warner Media and Disney have made DC and Marvel comics safer and more popular than they have ever been before. They are the piggy bank that will keep them alive for decades to come. I think having Marvel vs. DC battles are fun, and debating on which character would win is an interesting thought. I don't dwell on the whole which is better, Marvel or DC dilemma though, because there are captivating heroes, villains, and stories on both sides of the fence, and I enjoy both of them equally in their own ways. Warner Media and Disney may be corporate rivals at the box office and other markets, but the comic companies themselves, Marvel and DC, are not at each other's throats. Why would they be? Many editors, artists, and writers have all jumped ship back and forth several times over the years, and helped create countless characters and stories for both Marvel and DC. They all want to remain employed. They want a job tomorrow. Marvel and DC need to both be there for job security. Going back to Marvel vs. DC, the main selling point of Amalgam, I feel the need to bring up Marvel and DC fanboys, the toxic members of the comic book community. Much like fans of Star Trek or Star Wars, Pokemon or Digimon, hell, even sports nerds that obsess over specific teams for one reason or another are what are known as tribalists. They have unwavering loyalty towards their tribe, team, or brand, and usually, their mindset has nothing to do with the quality of the characters, stories, or in sports, players themselves. If that were the case, their favorite teams would change day to day when a certain player was traded or something. They are typically unfamiliar with the other side, or are biased because of upbringing or experience, blindly following like-minded people because it's human nature to want to feel accepted and be a part of a group in some way, be anchored to a cause or a brand, even if they don't fully understand the other side. Marvel and DC are both extraordinary storytellers when it comes to superheroes, and their characters have become some of the most iconic works of fiction on Earth. The purpose of Amalgam Comics may have been to allow fans to vote for winners in epic grudge matches and combine IPs to sell a few more magazines at the time, but all that was just the superficial when you take everything else into account. Amalgam was for the fans, and essentially made by fans, the ones working on it behind the scenes, who enjoyed the characters from both universes. It was DC and Marvel showing respect for the other, telling the other they had each other's back in desperate times. Go and fanboy all you want over Marvel or DC, because apparently you can only choose one, but I'll be over here enjoying both, happy as can be.